Living Well with Rentwell, Rob Coldwell here with my man Tim Davis.
Hey Rob, happy to be here. It's nice to see you again. I'm the first person to go twice, right?
You are.
Woo!
You're gracious enough to come back.
This is
Who
my
is Tim Davis?
opportunity.
I'll give you my synopsis. So half a decade ago, I read the book The Untethered Soul. Then I read Surrender Experiment. Then I started listening to Michael Singer, and I made a trip to the temple. And I didn't know you then, but I saw you there, and you were playing the drums, and you were also handling the recordings. And then a few years later, we another trip, and then another trip, and then after a trip about a year ago, I met what I call Real Estate John, and Real Estate John, then a month later, said, "Hey, there's a longtime resident of the temple whom is now offering like support for people and coaching and guidance and mentoring." And I thought maybe you'd be interested. And I was like, dude, sign me up. So Tim, you've lived at the temple now 35 plus years.
30 plus years.
You've
30 plus. Around 35.
Okay. Okay. And today's episode, we'll see where it takes us, but there's a couple things that I wanted to just kind of put out there, and we set that intention before we hit the record button. So in right about a week, I think it's like July 16th, you and another close friend have put together a course that helps humans with achievement and serenity. So I definitely want to cover that. It is going to be a very powerful course for those that choose to engage in it and show up. It's not a very expensive course in the scale of courses, which I also appreciate, making it accessible to really anybody. So let's start here. I recently came back from the temple, right? And it was my first solo visit. And I got to tell you, I'm finding re-entry can be a little challenging. And I think that some people almost don't want to start down this path because it creates some level of uncomfortability in their world. So I personally am looking forward to the course coming up in I think it's that Sunday, July 16th. It's going to be at 7 p.m. So my question to you, sir, right, is this. I think a lot of people, the name of one of the books is The Surrender Experiment. There's a lot of words of acceptance. There's a lot of words of peace. There's a lot of words of relaxing. And I feel a lot of people are like, dude, I'm not going to survive if they live that way. I'm doing as much as I can right now. I couldn't imagine if I let go a little bit and relaxed. Couldn't imagine if I just accepted. And what was cool of the last visit is, I'll give one short story, then turn it over to you, is the power was out at the temple. And I got to sitting there and engaging in dinner with everyone that lives at the temple. I got to engage in interaction between Michael Singer and the manager of the property about, I wish the generator was working for the temple because then we wouldn't need these lights, the bathrooms could work and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I need to see that level of interaction. That is very helpful for me because it's not like there isn't a plan for the temple. It's not like there's not an operating budget. It's not that there's not somebody responsible. Like everybody was assigned a certain day to make dinner. People are assigned to clean up. So that's where I'd like to start with this, just right off the bat. Like, we're not saying that we're not going to have an intention, or we're not going to have you can kind of help me fill in the blanks of this,
Sure.
right? Like, I'm a father.
There's an assumption of passivity, right?
Budgets.
There's an assumption that there's like a passive nature to surrender, and nothing could be further from the truth, as I'm sure when you saw Mickey engaging to get the power back on, there was nothing passive about how he handled that situation, correct? He was,
So
very
peace is not necessarily passive.
no. No, 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 no,
We
no,
need to
no.
go there because
Okay,
I
so let's
feel
start
like
with this.
it's yeah.
Let's start with this. Like when you think about what might be the greatest act of surrender that, let's say, well, just for the sake of argument or discussion, a young man might make, right? The greatest act of surrender may be to be pulled into your country's army and sent off to war. Okay? You're
Mm.
surrendering, right? That's what life asked of me. And when a young man or a young woman gives their life in service of their country, that is the most profound, active, powerful thing that they can do. And it's surrendering to the needs of the many. They're giving their lives in an in a non-personal, unselfish way. But when they get to wherever they need to go and they've got a gun in their hands, are they being passive? It was an act of surrender that brought them there, but now they're going to fight like hell to defend themselves, to defend their country, to further the cause of the greater group, right? And that's an sort of an extreme example of what we're talking about, because where we get stuck so many times is making decisions from a very personal place, right? And we can get so strung out on our happiness and our wealth and our income and how we handle our lives that we're so focused on those things that we're thinking that we have to drive all of that. And we work so hard to bring that into our life. When Mickey talks about surrender, when we do the Shriyat Megiddo in the morning, those are examples of surrendering to the greater need or to a purpose that's higher than just our own needs, our own money, our own thing, and serving mankind the best we can. And sometimes that may mean that you have to defend yourself. Sometimes that means you have to defend other people. And that's a choice that you want to make from clarity and purpose with intention, not randomly and not out of anger or not out of like some moment of erupting, right? If it's time to take action, you do it mindfully. It's from a place of surrender to the need to take action. Does that make sense?
It's from a place of surrender.
Taking
Given
action.
the need to take action based
That's
upon
right.
intentions and clarity and I mean, if I have not had the experience of being drafted and having to go off to war, but I would like, you have to make peace with that. That,
Yeah,
okay, this is happening, right? Now, if you fight it and you haven't made peace with it, I would think that's almost more dangerous than I'm going to show fully present and know what's going on.
Exactly. Like if you show up
And that's what we're talking about with the peace. Because from my own example, in the last half decade, since if you would have told me that my life would be like it is now, by practicing acceptance, surrender, and peace, and other things that I do, like living clean and levels of tithing and different components that feel like the right intentions for me, right? This is being recorded from a beach house. That was not part of a plan that I ever had, that I ever thought that I would be having a beach house, right? And there's like, so that's the outside stuff, but there's a level of inside serenity that I didn't know really existed, that I was able to get a little, like, more and more, to get a little bit more of a taste for. So is that a different type of peace and serenity? Like this inward journey, or is it all the same? Like talk.
So it's
Are
all
they
it's all the
separate?
same.
What is that?
It's all the same from the standpoint that once you surrender to a situation, you do so with clarity, right? Like all the work that we've ever done around, the spiritual work, that have been in present for, religions from thousands of years ago, or even just psychology, right? Just the things that we do in modern life to find clarity, to make sure that our heads are kind of in a good place. That becomes the place that we operate from, right? That becomes the clarity that we work from. That is a place where we find non-personal. So surrendering is accepting that place, right? You're accepting the peace that you have. You're accepting that you're in a difficult situation, but you've got clarity. And like, so in business world, sometimes you have to fire people, right? Nobody likes to fire people. That's a classic case of surrendering, but with logic and clarity. So that becomes what you do. So you follow through with that. But once you have made that choice and you've made it from a centered place inside you that's clear and has logic and you're comfortable with it, now you're peaceful. You're going through a situation it's going to be difficult. No, I mean, how many difficult firings have we been through on both sides of the coin, right? But if you know you're doing what has to be done to support your business and to make the whole organization healthy, or to make your social group healthy, you have to do uncomfortable things. Firing's an example of that. But once you know that's what you have to do, there's a peace that comes with that, Rob. And that it's easy to blame oneself whenever there's discord or whenever there's difficult moments, whenever you do have to, let's say you do have to fight for some reason. Like, sometimes the surrender is to fight. You'll be in the street and somebody wants to take your wallet. Well, maybe it's the right thing to do to fight. Maybe it's not. That's a moment in the decision. But once you make that choice and it's time to operate, then you do so with knowledge and confidence in your own judgment. And that surrender is the peace, because you know that you're doing the best that you can given all the situations in life. You've peeled your ego out of it. So you're not stepping into an area where you're just trying to defend some belief about yourself that doesn't really help, or to protect some illogic that you might be carrying. We're working hard to kind of sift all that out so that when we get down to the parts that we use, the parts of our mind that we use to make decisions, we do so with confidence and serenity and peace. And surrender is part of how we find peace in those moments.
So it's the place of where we're coming from with it,
Yeah.
almost regardless of what's showing up in front of us in life.
It's an amazing thing that sometimes we have to do horrible things, like life. Think of the word triage, right? That in a war situation, there are medics that actually have to walk across a battlefield and make choices about who lives and who doesn't, right? How the hell are they supposed to be at peace with that, right? But they have to be. You have to look at the reality of the situation. And let's say you know the math in your head and you're the person doing the triage. We have enough beds for 30 people. We have enough doctor support to support 40 people. There's 180 people here. The reality of the situation brings you peace. And it may be horrible, and it may be uncomfortable, and it may be a scene of death and destruction, but you operating inside that can have peace because you know that you're doing the best you can under the circumstances that you've been given. And the beauty of that,
those that couldn't be there, then they can't help, right? Isn't that the challenge?
Absolutely.
If you can't be at peace with it, you can't help. That analogy that Mickey uses all the time with, if you can't stand the sight of blood and your child gets hurt riding on their bike and you can't help, go get a Band-Aid, or it's worse and you got to call 911, like, you can't help the situation if you can't make peace with it.
And that's the least peaceful place to be in, right? Because now you're beating yourself up because you couldn't help and you didn't know what to do, and you haven't sorted through your stuff.
Yes.
So let's take that concept.
For anybody listening, that's why I wanted to go there. It's just like, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about lower levels of apathy and what was the other word that you used?
Disconnectedness. I'm not sure. This isn't about disconnecting from life.
Yeah.
This isn't about being passive around life. This is about accepting the reality of life. And sometimes that does mean surrender, because you're setting your ego to the side. We all have preferences. We all like everything we do to be a million times successful, right? That's not the reality. But when we do accept reality, then we can do what business is. Business is about coming out with an idea, believing in yourself, putting yourself out there, taking a risk because you're betting on yourself. Now, once you do that, things don't always work the way you think they are. Business is about responding to those moments, to adjust the course of plan, to figure out the new thing that you're going to do, to take what you thought was your core competency and maybe it applies in this area. It's about reacting but you can't react from ego. That's where the surrender comes in. If interest rates go up all of a sudden, Rob, now your business model changes completely, and you go, sorry about that. I didn't want to put that look on your face. but that's reality. And you have to surrender to it, because even though your ego would like to say, gosh, with certain kind of financing now I can, get 100 more apartment complexes over the next 5 years, maybe that's not the right thing to do. And if you don't surrender to the reality of changing economic conditions, you're going to make mistakes, because you're operating out of untruth, unclarity. Maybe it's your ego. Maybe you said something to someone. Maybe you want to appear to be somebody who's got blah, blah, blah. But reality brings clarity, and you have to surrender to reality. That's really what this is about.
When I met with Real Estate John in this last visit, and it was nice to have, when I come there now, it's nice to have different perspectives, because it's all kind of ways to get to hear it. And he says, Rob, it almost just like, it's like relaxing, and you just continue to kind of relax back behind it. And that was really, really helpful for me. It's like you've heard something 1,000 times, but then you hear it from somebody else in a different setting, and it's like, oh, this is what they mean, and this is what they're talking about. So I would encourage everybody, if you haven't yet read Untethered Soul, Living Untethered, Surrender Experiment, all phenomenal books. If you're looking for somebody to help you on that journey, maybe you've read those, maybe you've made a visit to the temple. I've gotten and I continue to get a tremendous amount of value from working one-on-one with Tim to like implement. And I would pull out some goals, and I'm getting all frustrated because I look at this thing called a garden of life, and it's like my finances are growing, and the children are doing well, but now my health is starting to, and it's like he can direct me to the North Star, and to make peace with this. And then guess what? By doing that, okay, now I'm making better choices about what I'm putting into my body. Now I have more energy to go boogie board with the kids, or go for a little run or a walk. And so I would just want to let everybody know, like, we're not recording this as something that nobody else has accessibility to. Anybody can read these books. Anybody can show up to the Temple of the Universe. You don't need a reservation. The schedule's publicly posted online. If you show up with more than 15 people, like I tend to do, give them a heads up.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And now, yep, and they will accommodate, right? And I also recommend, as I've recently done, just go by yourself once you've made a trip or two. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a different experience, minus the speeding ticket I got on the way when I was leaving.
Nice.
But that was another experience. Now, and then Tim is available to connect one-on-one, but at the same time, you have led one program for the men's group that we have called Every Man's Mastermind, which was available to any gender. It was a 6-week program. It was on Sunday nights at 7:00. We had about 20 engaged individuals with it, and about 15 made it to the temple visit at the end of the program. Now, this program, talk to us about what what do you have in store for us? And again, this starts Sunday, I believe it's the 16th of July, 2023 at 7 p.m.
Eastern. So yeah, this is I want to think about how to frame this. So like you said, 30 years ago, I started coming to the temple, and I was also at the same time starting a career. So this is the 90s, right? Early 90s. And I was a photojournalist. I have a degree in journalism from the University of Florida, specializing in photography. And I was just starting at the Gainesville Sun as a photographer. And so I was going to see Mickey, twice a day. And the thing that I loved about, that his teachings, the kind of stuff that you find in the Untethered Soul and in the Surrender Experiment, is that they were just immediately helpful. And the mindfulness, or like the mindfulness is a term that's thrown around so much now. It's just like a marketing term. But really what it is that you have the opportunity to watch how yourself works, how you work. You get to watch how Rob works when you get to a certain state where there's a calmness, a sense, we'll work on skills of how to sort of be mindful and present in every situation. But once I got that base kind of skill down, then I could go to work and face all kinds of pressures from a completely different viewpoint, right? So it was a high stress job, and newspapers weren't doing well in the 90s. They were feeling like they had to, really struggle. And our little photo department was just going everywhere, shooting pictures all night and all day. There was a period of time where, like, after I became boss, that I would be woken up at like 1 o'clock in the morning 3 times a week to try to assign some photographer to run out on the interstate and shoot an accident or something. It was horrible. I really didn't like that. But I needed my mindfulness. I needed these techniques to kind of work through that. And what I would find from sitting in the temple and meditating and doing these, listening to Mickey's talks, was that when I did go to work, I would feel the energy start to rise in resistance around certain situations that caused me stress or anxiety or fear, or that just plain didn't make sense. I was the boots on the ground photographer, and editors have, as I call them, head movies. And there's just all kinds of ways that there can be strife and discord and disagreement. And what I found was that in my ability to kind of step back and breathe and relax, just like that thing you talked about earlier about getting behind, you mentioned getting behind, and I wanted to just clarify that a little bit, that really what you're talking about is seeing your mind operate, seeing it go through whatever minds go through. They freak out, they have anxiety, they have stress, and just kind of stepping back behind it and giving it space to go through what it goes through. But you don't necessarily have to move your mouth in those moments. You don't have to act out. You can kind of let that impulse pass and then make a choice based in wisdom. You can act based in good judgment, clarity, or at least not from being a raving mad lunatic, right? Because I found that, early in my career, that's how I would act. So these exercises, this practice was about finding like that moment of peace in the moment, in news meetings and places where I had to make decisions that, would affect people's lives and how they, conduct their lives with their family, the whole thing. And so that moment when I actually had peace and I started making better decisions and better judgments, like it really brought that sense of serenity in, because even when I had to make difficult choices, I knew that they were the best choices in terms of supporting the newspaper, the interest of the newspaper, the interest of the photographer, the interest of my department. All those levels had to be sort of maintained, and I could do that easier because I started using some of those principles. Now, fast forward, it's 2023. As I've reflected back on my life, I've seen all the things that I did, like in those 20 or 30 years of living at the temple. I studied Mickey's words because I was there every day, but I also studied Buddhism, and I got into the Sufi poets, and there's all these gurus and teachers. There's Yogananda, there's Muktananda, there's the teachings of Christ. All of these spiritual traditions have a very consistent set of do's and don'ts. And that's kind of where I've landed. And a lot of what this course is built on the common North Star values that each of these spiritual traditions provided. And Mickey synthesized those really well. Like Mickey's teachings are just an amazingly high quality synthesis of years, thousands of years of those teachings into a way that just makes sense. He brought them into the language of our era and into our culture in a way that's really palatable, that makes sense. They're easy to understand. And I'm doing my best to help continue that process. And so what I started to find, Rob, was that I set intentions. Like that was the thing that I did. Every morning when we do the Shriyat Megiddo, that's an intention setting, right? That in the midst of the mightiest storm, that we will be peaceful, we'll have calmness, and we'll be able to conduct our business in a way that raises the energy and makes situations better, no matter what. That became my intention. That became one of my North Star intentions, as you mentioned. And so I had some really high level intentions that I let operate and drive every action. And then I started seeing, you know what? I've got a meeting every week on Thursdays where I have to deal with certain personalities that I don't typically get along with very well. They don't, you know, they don't make me happy. I don't make them happy. They're, for whatever reason, there's an adversarial situation that just kind of kicks in. So as I would get ready for those meetings, Rob, again, I would set an intention. I would say, okay, I'm about to have this meeting with Craig. I'll just use the name Craig. And I'm going to be, my purpose in this meeting is to further the financial power of the Gainesville Sun and to make good journalism available for everybody who picks up a copy of the Gainesville Sun. I want to create journalism integrity. I want everything that my department produces in terms of photography to be true to life and a fair and accurate representation. So as I go into this meeting with Craig, I have a set of values. And they refer to my North Star values, my spiritual values, my personal integrity. They create a standard of high level of work that's not about me, my ego, or the ego of even the photographers and the people who work for me. It's about service, right? It's not about me, it's about service. And so I found that when I prepared myself to go into this meeting with Craig, and I was on this level, I wasn't counterpunching, I was proactive, and I was expressing a viewpoint, and I was helping to create a better outcome. When I wasn't setting an intention, when I wasn't so consciously aware, when I wasn't so mindful of what the purpose of that meeting was, I would just get reactive. And if he said something that pissed me off, then it became personal immediately. Like I was now just defending myself. I was fighting back. I was saying, well, I may have done that wrong, but you did this wrong, just to kind of create a level playing field, basically bring everybody down instead of trying to raise everybody up. Setting this intention helped me to have a discipline about how I use my thoughts, my mind, my logic, and it created positive outcomes every time. And I walked away in peace. So if you take these multiple levels, right, Rob, you've got like this high level North Star intentions. Then you've got these like meeting by meeting of intentions. You've got the intentions that you want to set as you walk in and you be with your family. They become an instinctive part of your life where you really frame what a success looks like, how to be successful, not just financially, but emotionally. How available are you for your family? Are you expressing love? Are you raising the energy of your family situation? When you go see your husband, when you go see your wife, are you raising their energy? Are you helping them to have a better outcome for their day? How are you managing every moment? And what I found was that when I built a system of intentions, that I was able to kind of create better outcomes. And one more thing, because I've been talking for a long time, but the beautiful thing about this, Rob, is like, you know, there's a lot of people who struggle with addiction. A lot of people struggle from just like that moment by moment need to feel better. And the higher you stack those intentions, there's a lot of work around this with habit setting, Atomic Habits, right? Talks about this. Once you start to stack these intentions, they work together and they support you. And when you need a little bit of strength to not ingest something, to have that beer or whatever that we all like to ingest, from, you know, sugary foods to drugs or whatever, you've got this whole stack of intentions that's taking you to a higher level. And that peace, not only does it mean that you're more comfortable and less needful for external comforts, but it also just builds this love for yourself. Like you see how you can act in stressful situations, and it builds a sense of contentment and love and respect, self-respect, that now makes you want to be nicer to yourself, makes you want to be good to yourself and do the good thing, do the right thing for yourself. And I've seen this work. Like it works under all circumstances, Rob. And so when I teach in prison, that's a main piece of the meditation. The main thing that we learn is that everyone has a core of goodness inside them. And the closer that you identify with that core, the higher your response tends to be, the better you tend to be in certain situations. Since I've started working at the prison, some of the wardens have talked about how that the inmates in this dorm that I'm working with have a better a better response to threat and violence. Like they have better skills around picking their course of action because they have higher respect for themselves. That's coming from the prison administration. The guards feel safer in the dorms that we do this work in. So you're setting a stack of intentions that become habits, that become how you run your life. And now after 33 years, here's the level it's gotten to. If somebody rushes up to me and they want to struggle, fight, or come up to me with something, there's a space that just kicks in automatically. It's just part of my muscle memory, right? A lot about this is building that. This course is about building that muscle memory, but that muscle memory happens in a second. And literally, words come up, people come up, talk to me, something comes up. I instinctively just take a breath and sort of lean back. That get behind space you talked about earlier, split second,
Yes.
and I'm able to respond with clarity. So this doesn't require, like, this course of action doesn't make you disconnect from life. It actually, you engage with it just super completely with authenticity, with integrity. And it's not about passively backing off from situations. It's about giving yourself space to make your own response, to not make responses based on triggering, where in essence, you're in control of another person. When another person triggers you, now you're under their control. This creates space so that you're under your own direction. You have your own intention. You have your own sense of purpose, and you're responding to that high sense of purpose that you've already created. And you've been repeating to yourself every day for years what your responses cascade from that initial set of intentions. That's the purpose of this course.
Beautiful. And that's what we're gonna get into.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's nice is we get to do it with also other people. Not everybody can live down in Alachua, Florida, and do morning and evenings at the Temple of the Universe. I mean, that's not possible.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of people that do it. I think there's more people buying property that I've now met.
There's a little land boom down here for sure.
I've kicked the idea around myself. So what we've formed is there's a men's group called Every Man's Mastermind. That's what's helping to put this together. And that group meets in what are called pods every other week for about 45 minutes to an hour. I've been in the same pod for almost a decade. So I've seen men that now have children where they thought they couldn't. I've seen divorces, marriages, businesses go up, businesses come down, all walks of life. But I think there's something about a communal of sharing. And what my question is at the temple, that's not what mornings and evenings are about. Mornings and evenings, from my own experience with it, is a collective chant, prayer, intention. Is there a time where the members get together to like mastermind with each other on what they have? Like, does that happen over meals? Like, what does that component look like? Because what I'm starting to recognize is I don't have clear time blocks to do the intention setting in my own life. And what struck me about the program that's being put together is it talked about the habits, and really humans are a collection of their habits. I mean, you look at somebody who's physically fit, you can kind of guess what their habit is. You look at somebody who's not, you look at somebody who's stressed out and a lot of money in the bank. I bet you they're working a lot more than most, and you like different. What does the community down in Alachua, Florida, that stays at the Temple of the Universe, beyond the sessions in the morning and the evening, that's a collective raising the vibration, I feel like, for all, because that's how I feel when I'm there.
Yeah.
Is there a type of that mastermind format outside of those?
I'm going to say the short answer is no. Okay. But let me put some context around that. Think of the people who come to the temple as a mastermind group. Their only focus is seeking enlightenment, seeking that high spiritual, just getting as high as they can with all of this. So, the morning and the evening is our intention setting. When we do the Shriyat Megiddo, that's pure intention. That's the looking at example, from Hindu history of how to sort of manage surrender, having to fight. It's a story. It's a song, a story and a song. And we get together and we listen to Mickey's talks. Again, it's the same thing. So there's the times when we do gather sort of outside that experience of the mornings and the evenings, we do projects, right? Like we do Thanksgiving, or we do a Passover Seder, or we do Christmas, or we do our New Year's programs. And we actually get very intimately involved with each other in those moments because, we're handling tons of, it's like, the temple in essence is our living room, right? That's kind of how we feel about it. But yet every day, lots of people come, 10, maybe, I don't know if we get 100, I don't even know how many people we have, 50, 60, 70 people come through, right? Every day. So the common experience that we have, Rob, is about sort of managing all that, right? Is about getting the temple ready, getting, like on Thanksgiving, we do a potluck and we had like 600 people come one year, just to and walk through our lines and do the whole thing. We do all that together. But there is, even within that, though, even though that we aren't sort of gathering outside of the morning and evening sessions, we have a common language. We see each other every day. We support each other in that way. If anybody needs anything, there's just like, there's no sense of, we'll figure it out together, right? But there is, I think it really speaks to the power of having that morning and evening situation built in. There's just so much to that's what we now it lasts for hours, like when Mickey talks on Monday nights and Thursday nights, that's hours long. And there's a sense of, being in an energy that's really beautiful. And really
Are you aware of any other modalities, or are you aware of any other, the nature of my question, the intention of my question is to help those that aren't, I'll say the word fortunate enough, that it's not even about that, but to have that available to them. Because what I'm looking to do, and one of my intentions, right, and what I have, whether it's Lester Levinson that I'm listening to, or Jesus preaches, like what I keep hearing is to raise the consciousness of humanity, to make us more aware, to help us be better humans, to that's what it is, like to help each other, ourselves and each other. So I am always interested in and actively engage in these types of communities. And now we have the course. It's coupled with the men's group that has meaning. We'd love to do the women's version as well. And the nature of my question is that you've answered. It's like you have this community there. You have the morning and the evening services. You come together if somebody needs something, if outside, and the really right that's there is that you're holding sacred space for anybody who wants to come to experience this with you. And now we get to do our own version of this 6-week program. And then what's very cool is there's technology that allows people to stay more connected now than ever. But at the same time, I feel like the technology has made us less connected in a lot of ways. And I'm that guy that looks to go deeper and have more meaningful, deeper connections. And the most important one of all is with that source and with that consciousness. And
so I agree. Just quickly, a little housekeeping. If anybody wants to see like the schedule for the temple and any of that, it's www.tou.org, tou.org, and you can get the mission statement of the temple. Mickey's talks are available there, which and that is trying to fill some of that void that you're talking about in terms of having like a daily or weekly thing that you can do to kind of keep your head in the game of following your own best intention. But I get
and the Shriyat Megiddo, there's a recording of that available for purchase. So, sorry to cut you off. I think there's a time delay in our thing, but I was on a Facebook group, and there's a recording of that. I play that quite a bit in the mornings, and that's been that's been that's been great. So can we also do some housekeeping on the program for Sunday? Would you like to
Sure.
share your email address? Because for anybody listening to this, my email is so simple. It's rob@rentwell.com. You can email me if you want information about this program or anything that might be coming up in the future. And how about you, Tim?
So my website is timodavis.com, and my email address is tim@timodavis.com. And
Wonderful.
the purpose of this course is really to build a lot of the structure that you're talking about, is to kind of create systems that mimic, the support that I get at the temple, just the schedule, the daily focus on my higher priorities, my higher intentions. So I'll walk through the course so you kind of get an idea of what to expect. And I need to make sure to mention Mr. Mike Duffy. So Mike, my area of expertise is that I've lived at the temple and worked closely with Mickey for 33 years. And Mike is an actual, I don't want to use the word instructional designer, but he has led learning management for major companies, $5 billion companies. So he's really he knows how to make things really practical, and he's been really, we've really teamed up on this to keep things very practical and to come from a business orientation. And that's not hard for me because I have worked my whole life. I've run big departments and I've had, big budgets and done things. But Michael is really focused on how to sort of make this really accessible. So I just want to express my gratitude for that. So we're going to have 6 weeks. In each course, each week is going to be about an hour long. In the first week, we're going to do an introduction to the course, and Mike is going to administer something that he calls his wisdom diagnostic. And really, it's a way to look at your base happiness and where you're finding satisfaction and what's unsatisfying. And it's a way to kind of identify what's working and what's not working. And maybe you're doing great financially, but your marriage isn't whatever. So it'll look at all that, and it'll be sort of establish a starting point. The next step in week 2 that we'll review the results of the wisdom diagnostic, and we're going to do something that I think is really interesting. It's a Japanese concept called ikigai. And it's a way to kind of step away from your life as it is right now and find what's really important to you. The word ikigai, or the concept of ikigai in Japanese, is what brings purpose to your day, what gets you up in the morning. And we're going to answer the questions: what am I good at? What do I love? What does the world need? And what can I do to make money in this world? And it's less about changing any specific paths that you might be on, but that knowledge of where your deepest intention lies is really useful just to see and work with. And we've all been given the gift of a career that perhaps wasn't our intended career. I studied photojournalism, and pretty shortly I was running websites and doing other things. But this is a way to kind of settle that out and gain knowledge about yourself. We're going to do that in a public or in a group setting, so that we have the ability to discuss these things. And what I'm finding, because I'm actually doing this very same practice in prison, believe it or not. And it's really useful for people to get a sort of step back look at themselves and see what's sort of happening in their lives and where they'd like to go. So week 3, North Star intentions. And we've talked about those briefly, but those are the highest spiritual values that you have. And those will be combined with some of the ikigai information that you get to create that daily focus on what's most important to you. And this really comes from a lot of traditions. And as I was studying Buddhism, Buddhism has a really strict set of practices that they wrap around their morning worship. And it's all about repeating intentions. And when we set our North Star intentions, we're establishing that which we will be repeating on a daily basis as the pole star or North Star values of our life. Those are our North Star intentions. And like I said, we'll be combining those with the Ikigai to kind of create this master document of what your life's purpose is. Another way of looking at this is, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? And a lot of the, we've talked about sort of the habit structure of our worlds, and, habits don't change as easily or as productively when we set still goals, like when we set sort of milestones where we want to be. Say we want to weigh a certain weight by a certain date or have a certain amount of money by a certain date. What really works is when you set this vision of who you want to be. And what we'll be using the North Star intentions is to use spiritual values for who you really are already, like the highest version of yourself, and how we peel away the blockages to that so that we can get to those places. That's something that Mickey refers to constantly. Like, what's your highest intention for yourself, and who are you really? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? So that's how we're going to kind of set that. So that puts us halfway through the class. Do you have any questions before I sort of jump through the second 3 weeks, the second set of 3-week period?
Go for it, brother.
Okay, I'll keep going. I see you nodding and smiling, so I'll just take that as acceptance. So in week 4, we're going to talk about the intention process in real time, right? And I've got kind of a conceit that I'm following here, which is that we've got a learning, an exercise, and a product. And the learning for week 4 is an intention setting creates a kind of muscle memory for dealing with the unexpected high stakes, high pressure situations. And the exercise that we will review recent difficult work and family experiences and talk about how you felt you could have done better. And within that framework, we will develop a 3 to 5 set list of interactions, meeting responsibilities that we typically don't do well or would dread, and we're going to create intentions around those that will carry with us throughout our day. So we're looking at being just, and this is a Mike Duffy thing, dramatically productive and practical with how we set these exercises. We're going to do this in a group setting, and we'll all have a chance to talk about the stuff that pushes our buttons. And I really love week 4 because this is the stuff that I've been doing with my inmates for close to 2 years now. And this is where that space gets created between stimulus and response. This is where we start to, and those intentions become, the muscle memory resorts to the intention instead of the ability, the ego. Intentions are sort of the place you go instead of your ego to find inspiration for how to work through situations, to how to actually face difficult situations with creativity and clarity. You've had that thing where, like, you go through some difficult thing, somebody says something to you, and, like, the rest of the day you're going, I wish I'd said this, or if I'd only said this. Yes. We're trying to create.
Happens to us all.
And at the bottom line, like, if you look at the whole sort of range of goals and achievements that you can get in situations like this, our priority, Rob, never go backwards. Have you ever had that thing where you have a difficult interaction with somebody and you say something, and now instead of being okay, you both are having tension and you both are really not looking forward to that next meeting, that next weekly meeting or whatever? Don't go backwards. That's the purpose of it. Don't go backwards. So that's a really intense, that's how we start to set those intentions and put them into play. Week 5 is intention and surrender, which is exactly how we started the call, right? I don't want to go into this too much. It can get really confusing, but there's this beautiful, beautiful tradition in the Zen Buddhist tradition where they have koans. And the most sort of well-known one is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And the idea behind a koan is that your teacher gives you a problem to solve, but there's no answer to it. But yet it's still wrong to do nothing. And when I learned about that, like, all I saw was business. Like, that's what I saw life is, that in business, that's all you do is try to pick between the least damaging of really difficult situations. Like, you go back to the interest rates going up. What the hell do I do now? And this is how we find that space inside us to surrender to reality. And we're going to do some exercises to kind of make that work. And, one of the things that occurred to me was that in this world, we don't need koans because life is our koan. Life is God made visible. Life is the sandpaper that refines us. And that's how we're going to look at this. Like, the problems that come up in life are actually to our benefit. They're a learning. They're a diagnostic. They help us to see where we need to do our work. So week 5 is really valuable because we're taking mindfulness and intention and putting it into real life situations where it really helps, where it really is practical knowledge. My deepest desire is that everybody gets a sense of what I call practical intuition. And it's that sense when you don't know logistically, you can't look at a spreadsheet and solve a problem all the time. As a business person, you need to have intuition that takes all the information that you curate from all your sources, your spreadsheets and your knowledge of your market and the people that you're dealing with, and that turns into intuition. But that intuition is supported by a quiet place inside you. You can only have that intuition if your mind isn't going crazy with fear, with personal anxiety, with ego. We try to create a quiet space where that personal and practical intuition can help you solve problems in a very real way. So week number 6, the last week, is we're going to just formalize all of this work into a document. And I call it Activate Your Superpowers using monthly and weekly intuition. So you're going to have your master list of your North Star intentions, and we're going to make monthly and weekly intentions. And I've just seen miracles work around this. And it's a way to take the depth and practicality of spirituality and apply it to your life. And one of the things that we're typically focused on when we do that North Star intention setting, that very top level of intention setting, is that we want our family life to be healthy. We want our relationships to be healthy. We want our monetary situations, our financial situations to be healthy. And when we set that as a goal, and then we set these monthly and weekly intentions, that's where that balance comes in, right? There's all this talk about work-life balance and how do you maintain the effort the Olympian level effort that it takes to be an entrepreneur and maintain a family and have children and do the processes that grow us. Like if your business isn't growing, it's dying. But it's important that your family is growing, and it's important that the people in your charge, your children, are growing too. How do we balance all that? Well, that's how we make that happen with these intentions. So that's the high points of the 6 weeks, and then we'll do a return to the wisdom diagnostic and just see, did we improve? Did we grow? Did we learn from this? That's it in an extra large nutshell.
I love it. I'm excited for it. It's right around the corner. This episode's going to drop on the Wednesday just before, but I'm going to start texting some people and in different WhatsApp groups and masterminds and connections to just invite anybody who would like to join us on this journey. It's been designed that you didn't have to do anything previously leading up to this. That was also intentional of right. How we did. You don't have to have already visited the temple. You don't have to have already read a book. You don't have to have already whatever. So the right people will be there. We'll have you back yet again. Mr. Davis, so. I love connecting with you. I'm so grateful that you're in all of our worlds, my world especially, and I'll leave you with any closing words for the guests as we bring this episode of Living Well with Rentwell to a close.
Well, I want to thank you for the platform, and thank you. You've been incredibly supportive and encouraging for me, and you've helped me to realize the confidence to grow into doing some of these things. You've really nurtured my processes, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And the thing that I would close with is that, we can get into a space where we look at this spiritual work as a responsibility or a hassle or a thing that we have to do. And I just want to say it's a privilege and it's a joy. It's the only game that really matters. We could go to the Olympics, we could play pickleball, we can play whatever sport there is. This is the thing that matters. And we start to look at it with that kind of attitude of surrender, but it's kind of gamified in our own hearts. It's beautiful. This is how we explore and learn who we are, and whatever feelings we have about God, by whatever name we call God, or even as atheists, you just treat people beautifully. There's support in this process for everybody. And that's the purpose of this program. That's it.
Well said. Love you, brother.
Look forward to it. Thank you. Take care.
thank you for listening to Living Well with Rentwell. We hope you loved that episode.
Please be sure to head over to our website at rentwell.com/vision. We're giving away our free program called Vision Through Purposeful Action. If you're a busy person, if you struggle with finding the time and priorities, or if you're experiencing procrastination and overwhelm, this free course will help you with that.
We wish you a blessed day. Thank you for tuning in, and check in later.